So I'll just introduce myself briefly. Nihal, Krishan. I'm a visiting fellow here with CSDR focused on tech policy, sort of helping to lead our emerging technologies and society program. Also do some writing and reporting for the Hindu. My colleague Arun will be moderating another session later today. And I'm also a fellow with the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. And I've been focused on the nexus of tech and politics for the past decade, mostly in Washington, D.C., with Mother Jones, the New Republic, the Washington Examiner, two different publications and outfits on the national level. And then I've been in Delhi for a while now with CSDR and the Hindu. And this is sort of a little bit of my brainchild, and with a lot of help from Gaurav and Devika and Dr. Jacob. Basically, there's with the elections approaching, tech is sort of infused and intertwined in all ways, whether it's the election commission scandal and how we've been able to unearth transparency in how funding happens, or it's how the message is getting out by the BJP and the Congress on WhatsApp or Facebook or Instagram. Technology is at the beating core of how many people decide how to vote, where they get their information. So we just thought it was fitting to have an event on some of the key themes of how technology and technology policy will impact the election, misinformation, disinformation, content moderation on big platforms, and then of course AI and its many forms, some of which are exciting and innovative, some of which are scary and can be misused. So with that, I'll kick us off. As we have on our program here, we have the first panel is on misinformation and disinformation and navigating the impact of deepfakes and bad actors. And then we'll have a tea break, and then a second panel on content moderation, and then another tea break and one on AI policy. So I will kick things off. So our first panel, which is on misinformation and disinformation, I'll just quickly introduce all of our panelists here. So we have Abhilash Mallick, who's the fact-checking editor at the Quint, who enjoys working on investigative pieces to identify bad actors spreading disinformation. And when we kick off, you're welcome to introduce yourself further. We have Archis Chowdhury, senior correspondent with Boom India. He's a journalist, fact-checker, podcaster, and specializes in politics, hate speech, and online radicalization and fake news. So that's Archis. We have Miss Charu Pragya, who's a lawyer politician who heads the national legal cell of the BJP's youth wing. She's also a nationalist TV panelist for the BJP and speaks on issues related to governance, policy, local civic issues, education, social rural programs. And her roots are in rural Uttar Pradesh, but her feet are here in urban Delhi, and she works to bridge the social justice gap between rural and urban India. So that's Charu. Then we have Ruchira Chaturvedi, who is the national convener of social media and digital communications for the Indian National Congress. And she's previously worked in the party in many capacities. She's a former LAMP fellow, PRS legislative research, and most importantly, she walked the Bharat Jodo Yatra with Rahul Gandhi and a number of others, and coordinated its social media activities, and wrote a best-selling book on the Yatra, which is out shortly. And last but not least, Debayan Gupta, assistant professor of computer science at Ashoka University. He teaches courses on security and privacy, as well as introductory programming classes. He's a visiting professor and research affiliate at MIT and MIT Sloan. And today, for some time, and today in particular, we focused on short-term spikes in misinformation in a sort of quantitative analysis. So these are our esteemed panelists. Thanks all of you for coming today. So I'd like to kick things off by just introducing a few key data points, and then we'll get right to the questions, and everyone can introduce themselves any further if they feel the need. So I think the most sort of staggering headline based on a study done by Social Media Matters, which is an Indian nonprofit, shows that 65% of people voting for the first time have encountered fake news, predominantly through social media platforms like WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook. And the report sheds light on the various sources of misinformation on digital platforms, word of mouth. And alarmingly, over 37% of respondents admitted to being directly impacted by fake news and misinformation. The World Economic Forum has ranked India the #1 country in the world at risk of misinformation and disinformation, and has said, quote, the presence of misinformation in these electoral processes coming up in April and May could seriously destabilize the legitimacy of newly elected governments. And just so everyone knows that this is supposed to be a fair, impartial study. The other countries high at risk of impact of misinformation are Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, the United States, France, and Finland. These are the top. So it's not just India or the global south. This is a global problem. Even big Western countries face it. But they've said India is the #1 country at risk of misinformation and disinformation, affecting its elections. And, so we've seen in the 2019 election, for example, fake news was rife all across. We see the weaponization of platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook to spread fake and incendiary messages, to heighten fears and create online anger that has and could spill into real world violence. And so, in response to this misinformation and disinformation, governments, including ours, could be increasingly empowered to control information based on what they determine to be true. So I think these are just some of the key facts, data points on this. And so I'd like to kick things off by allowing each person to, explain in their own words, to what extent does misinformation and disinformation, mostly on online platforms and news outlets, present a significant concern, as asserted by Social Media Matters or the World Economic Forum? How serious should we take these reports and data when it comes to misinformation here, particularly in the context of the election? We can start with you, Krishan.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, thank you, CSDR, Nihal, for organizing this. I think this is a very timely discussion, although the issue is not new. And what global reports, including the World Economic Forum, have pointed out that disinformation and misinformation are now a top threat. 10 years ago, I think the World Economic Forum's report said that this was among the top 10 issues. Today, it's the top issue. I think personally for me, we've been having so many discussions over the past few years, but nothing has come of it. And there are two issues here. One is that even though, the issue has become so big that it is now, threatening democracy, there have been instances where misinformation has actually led to physical violence, social unrest, inciting social disharmony, but nothing concrete has really come of it. One issue is that the platforms have also allowed, to let this issue fester for too long. They do not have the capacities, or probably they do not want to do anything about it. The other issue is about enforcement. Even when these things are being pointed out, what is really being done about it? Just to give you an example, for instance, on Twitter, which is X now, they have something called as, whenever you point out something which is like videos which are taken out of context, or videos which are blatantly fake, the maximum that they do is they label it, they call it manipulated media, or they say that this video is out of context. Now that does nothing, because while Twitter has very little user base, how this travels is that screenshots and videos are taken on WhatsApp, and that's how people, that's how people come to know about it. So the platforms do not take down such, fake news. The other thing is we don't have any authority, like for instance, something which is autonomous, something which is a neutral adjudicator to really, take on this, to really combat this. Election Commission is either too slow or too prompt, and only probably acting during elections or not acting. So I think the need of the hour is to actually act on these things, and I hope through this discussion today, we can probably come out with some tangible solutions which can, then be implemented. Thank you.
Thanks, Rishabh.
Hi, I'm Archis from Boom, as Nihal introduced me. Thanks a lot for having us here together. So on this question, I think if political stakeholders believe that disinformation and misinformation is an important political tool, then it is consequential for all of us. Nihal did cite a study saying that there were people who had self-reported being impacted by disinformation, but it is really extremely difficult to ascertain how much the messages you're receiving on your WhatsApp influences the final decision inside a voting booth. But theoretically, what we know is that it can have a tremendous effect if done properly, if targeted properly. And that is why it is a major problem. And in India, another problem we face is all these technologies that we have access to where disinformation spreads. These companies are not from India, and it's very hard for us to hold them accountable, despite the IT rules. It's really important that we look at it from all, like, the entire angles, and because political entities are so invested in this problem, we are in a kind of a deadlock where we don't know whom we should go to, looking for solutions. And all the regulatory measures so far has not really addressed the problem properly. And that is why it poses such a major risk in this election season, I feel.
Thanks, Archis.
Hi, I'm Abhilash, as Nihal introduced. Again, misinformation, this is not a new concept for this year's election. What is going to be different is the use of deepfakes and AI-generated content. And as Archis correctly pointed out, a lot of these platforms which facilitate creation of deepfakes, as well as the ones that help in detection of deepfakes, are based in the West. And the tools that they're developing are also for the West, and also for the skin tones which are difficult for tools to identify. Like an Indian skin tone is difficult to identify on such a tool. So it then becomes a bigger problem and becomes a concern for civil society bodies in India, journalists and fact checkers in India, to take misinformation more seriously when it comes to 2024 elections. As we already know that disinformation is going to impact voter behavior. It's a concern for people who are going into voting for the first time. So that's where I come from. Like, there are problems, and the solutions are not centered around India.
Understood. Thanks, Abhilash.
Thank you very much, Nihal and CSDR, for having me. My work is basically working with the media and the social media. So I think information, misinformation, disinformation is something that we deal with every day in our lives. Just to sum up in my opening remarks, one, I think the problem that's plaguing us today is this hyper-partisan. Everybody on social media has got a very, very strong viewpoint one way or the other. Usually, there's a proverb which goes, birds of feather flock together. So you follow the kind of people whose ideology matches yours. So it's so easy to spread misinformation if you are in that particular circle. Also, I believe that when something is shared on Twitter, even if Twitter takes it down, the dissemination of information happens over a week, over 2 weeks on other platforms. So slowly it will leak down to the next platform, and then maybe screenshots will be sent across WhatsApp. And even if you pull off a particular piece of information from one social media platform, it's already far too late and you cannot control it. It's like wildfire. When it goes off, it goes off. I also want to make a point about social media being more and more about validation, not about information. And that is a fact, because nobody goes on social media. See, when you look at data and you look at studies, everyone who is on social media realizes that there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation there. So everyone is vaguely aware that everything they're reading could be false or negative. So when that exists, I think it is more for validation. You go there to get likes on your post or like someone else's post. And then, like I said, birds of a feather flock together. We have to keep that in mind. The IT rules are going to go a long way in helping us curb at least some amount of misinformation, because it's not just political impact. It could be impact on a public personality's reputation. It could be criminal things which crop up. I've been hearing about voices being concocted using AI, and then parents being fleeced. Their children appear to be in danger to them. So it's a far more deep-rooted problem than something we have to deal with for our general elections. And we need to look at a long-term impact of our policies and our decisions and our thought process.
Thank you, Charu. Debayan.
Everything important has been said, but I'll try to. Hi everyone, I'm Debayan. I think above and beyond what they said, what everyone had said, I want to bring out sort of 3 quick points, and we can sort of dive deeper into this. First, there's the question of does this kind of bad nonsense information, let's take the example of some odd video I see on a family WhatsApp group, does it actually change me? Does it change my vote? Does it change how I behave? And in many ways, one can argue that in the short term, it may not, because I'm receiving this from people who already believe the same sort of thing. I'm probably a little bit like them already. The reason I don't fact check it is because I already believe it, and so on. But what it can result in is increased polarization. That's point number 1. And this increased polarization, if it occurs all together at the same time, can result in, I won't say bad, but stupid behavior. The example that we were discussing a little while back is you can have background persistent rumors that exist for a long period of time. I use the example of, let's say, plastic rice in certain parts of Africa. And this rumor sort of percolates for a while. It sort of goes around, stays around for years and years. And suddenly there's a push. Everyone starts posting about it. And people stop buying rice. Crashes the rice market completely, and suddenly there's sort of a pseudo-famine. We've seen this happen in India as well, for both non-political and political cases. Oh, strangers in town will kidnap your children. Goes around, suddenly people get lynched. Right? Just before, we're sitting in Delhi, we were just discussing, just before the 2015 elections where AAP gained power in Delhi, do people remember? Suddenly there was a spate of church vandalism.
Yeah.
Right? There was a church vandalism in 2023 also, a few months back, late 20. That didn't get connected together in the same way. The moment those 2015 sort of 10th February elections were over, suddenly apparently churches were not being vandalized anymore, or at least it wasn't a focused activity. So it's not just the news itself being fake, but things occurring and a connection being made, which is getting pushed. Now, there may be a background percolating rumor around, religious minorities being targeted, but it gets a particular form, or gets put into a particular format just before elections. That is extremely common across the world. And we've seen that happen directly, viscerally in India, with sometimes very, very violent outcomes. And the last point I'll just mention, there's a bunch more, but what I want to mention in my starting remark is we cannot rely on platforms to do this. Okay? Why? 2 reasons. Number 1, platforms make money the more sort of traction something gets. So, there is a perverse incentive over there. So we have to be careful about that. And second, we were just discussing on Facebook, even just 2 days back, I saw some relative posting, I hereby state that all my Facebook posts are my own property because there's a fake news on Facebook that Facebook is going to take all your pictures of yours on such nonsense. If Facebook can't stop that comment, which it knows is disinformation on its own platform about Facebook, we can't expect it to start stopping other stuff. We need something else. What else? Maybe we'll find out.
Yeah. So I'm glad you ended on the note of how platforms we can't really rely upon them in a substantive way to solve it. And that's why on this in this panel I would like us to focus more on what we can do within the institutions of government and civil society. We have a next panel which is focused on content moderation. We will have folks from the platforms and the big tech companies. So stick around for that one. If you want to go hard on the platforms, you'll have plenty of a chance to talk about that. And Charu and Ruchira can also pitch it. But I'd like to focus this conversation more on the government, the political parties, and civil society. So if we could start off by just, if we could, especially through Archis and Abhilash, maybe Debayan, cite a few examples of the key driving causes of harmful misinformation, disinformation, propaganda in India, and you can cite examples from the political parties, as you've seen them.
Yeah. So, like Debayan talked about the narrative setting part of it. A lot of content that we see from both parties are actually all parties
are something, you're not, sometimes does not come under maybe misinformation, maybe disinformation, but it adds to the narrative building in a larger scheme of things, and then leads to polarization of people, especially when there is a crisis time like elections. We consider it a crisis time in fact checking atmosphere, because there's a lot of disinformation that comes up during election times. So narrative building from both parties, spreading of disinformation around the elections, around the voter process, around the voting process, before that, and even sometimes after the elections, if it was fair or not, things like that, also impact how people see voting as a process, and how if it impacts them into going into vote for the next time or not. So those are the things that are a problem right now, which we see coming from different parties. We've seen the same videos of, say, one video of an EVM being stolen or EVM being manipulated from 2015 that happened somewhere in West Bengal. It keeps coming back every year. After a party loses in an election, that same video from 2015 keeps coming back, and people who are supporting the party who's lost would repeatedly share it again and again to say that this is why we lost, because the election was stolen from us. And similar videos of people running away with EVMs or things like that also keep coming back. So a lot of recurring misinformation, a lot of spreading of misinformation from political actors without any repercussions. Those are the point of concerns for us as fact checkers.
Just especially if you could shed light on examples from the BJP or Congress or AAP or leaders like Kejriwal or Rahul Gandhi or Prime Minister Modi.
See, I mean, I can definitely share some examples of top leaders sharing disinformation or misinformation. You know, for example, the Prime Minister had in February 2020 had cited a fake quote attributed to Omar Abdullah in a satire page called Faking News and cited it as real. Rahul Gandhi also made similar comments during the Bharat Chowdhury Yatra, which we had fact checked as well. The thing is, I mean, a lot of this you can't really connect it to a campaign. You know, mistakes can happen. So maybe the Prime Minister got one of those WhatsApp messages. Maybe he believed in it. I think the biggest problem is that political parties are now legitimately resorting to disinformation as a political tool to run their influence operations. And this is not just spreading misleading information. This is also creating false impressions of support or the opposite on social media through astroturfing. This is also putting together events or kind of like pitting people against each other on social media through the IT cells. So this is creating an environment of very conflicting information, which becomes really difficult for voters, especially first-time voters who are always on the internet, for them to basically process information correctly. And that leads to uninformed decision towards the end. Because again, like as Debayan was saying earlier, you know, nobody is looking at party manifestos. You know, they are looking at the information on social media. And if all of these information can be gamed, and and also you have to keep in mind how targeted political, how micro-targeted disinformation works. It's not about spreading disinformation, carpet bombing everybody with false news. It's about identifying the people whose views can be changed and targeting them at a crucial stage. And especially doing so in constituencies where the political competition is very tight. This is what translates into real life consequences. For example, just on the eve of the Bangladesh polls, there's an independent candidate called Beauty Begum whose deepfake went viral, saying that she's withdrawing from the candidacy. She lost by 3,000 votes. Who's to say this video didn't take away 3,000 voters of hers in the constituency who actually believe so? So this is the problem actually. So if political parties are all invested in this, then it's not going to go away. At Boom, we do these monthly and yearly reports, and 40 to 50% of all the disinformation that we fact check are all political. So it's coming from one political party or another, or entity, a political entity, I'd say, even satellite agencies, etc., supporters sharing fake news. So this is the biggest driving factor for disinformation in India.
So, Archis or Debayan, as you said, what 40-50% of the misinformation that comes from the political party. Are there like 2 or 3 examples that have caught like wildfire, that have gone viral in the past year or the past few months that we can that we can sort of?
I mean, it's going viral is so easy, you know. I mean, you had a ministry sharing a false piece of information about the BAPS Mandir being the first Hindu temple of UAE. That was from the ministry itself. I think there was a clipped video of Nitin Gadkari that was shared by the Congress official page that took his speech, that took his interview to London Top out of context. So if we just go into our report and look through month by month into our database, we'll find every month that there is an example that's like a piece of disinformation that goes viral. You know, it's very easy to make things viral. It's very common
from all parties.
Yeah, from all parties. You know, like I mean, BJP, Congress, TMC, DMK, just name them all. You know, you can spot them all.
Even when it comes to Kejriwal, we saw there was a report of how much people pay in each state for electricity, and the report was edited to put Punjab and Delhi on top. So the edited report was put out on Kejriwal's Twitter handle, now X, and it wasn't removed. It stayed up, and when we reached out, even then, when we published a fact check, even then it wasn't removed. So it has reached the audience that it intended to. It has done the damage. We publish fact checks on it, but then people who want to believe that this is the truth will never come and read our fact checks.
So I guess I'll kick it over to you, Charu, to see, you know, why is it that whether it is, you know, in your case, the BJP or others, that there is so much coming from the political parties themselves?
You know, this need for everything that you're saying, for it to go viral. I think everyone who exists on social media has this need. And the thing is that when, let's take an example of creating a reel. Now, this reel can be made with something real that is happening right now. We make a recording of this and we put it out. It can be made with some misinformation or disinformation we want to put out. And then maybe there is something that is deepfake. And one account will have all kinds of content, and this need to go viral is basically what is causing a lot of problems. From a political party's point of view, what is put out by their official handle is one thing, but you know, every political party or just people on social media in general, they all want to be in a space of being an influencer, that what they say matters and what they write should go viral, and that makes people become more and more outrageous. And because we were talking about fact checking and then making sure that we know what piece of information is coming from there. I just want to point out two things here. One, if it is information that we are dealing with, in a way, it is easier to fact check it. But what if it is deepfake? And even in a lot of Western countries, in countries where the penetration of the internet is far more currently, it's very difficult even now to draw a distinction between what is real, what is not. And by the time you manage to find out if this was original or it's a deepfake video, it's already far too late. I'll take the example of a video of Shivraj Singh Chauhan during the Madhya Pradesh election, and I think Boom fact checked it. It was a KBC video which went viral, and it's all over the place before you realize that it doesn't even exist. It's deepfake. So while we're dealing with information, misinformation, disinformation, we cannot leave out the fact that AI has gotten to a point where it can be used and misused. So from my point of view, if I say AI is great for me because I can take a speech and translate it into 20 languages and put it up, it's a great thing. It's very positive. But what if that same AI is being used for, say, a criminal activity, or to make a leader make a statement so outrageous that it's going to create impact in the election long term? And there is where we cannot just say governance is enough. We can frame rules, as Debayan was saying, we can do that. Of course, we can have laws in place, we can put checks and balances, but who's going to implement it and how are we going to do that? So it has to be civil society which steps in. It's like policing. There cannot be a cop standing over the head of every single citizen. So our cyberspace, the tech giants, all these spaces, they can become safer only when civil society steps in. Information has to be, I shouldn't say information, awareness has to be created. If we go back to the time of COVID, there was an equal amount of wrong stuff floating around, and there was a lot of belief in those wrong things. So only awareness will work. I think the younger generation is good at both the things. understanding that there's a lot of fake news out there, but also being very impressionable and believing in a lot of those fake things, and only making them aware of how the internet has been functioning in recent times is going to be helpful.
Understood.
I want to come back to the role of what Debayan mentioned about the tech companies. So while the buck does not stop with them, but I do think that they have to do more, they have to step up. And if they are operating like in India and they are earning from the Indian market, then they have to do more. And it's not like that they don't have the technologies. So for instance, in US, they do have automation which can detect content which is racist. So they have those kind of technologies. Why can't something similar be done in India? And they do have technologies like COVID also you pointed out, they were labeling content, right? And when they want to, they can take down one video which is posted across on different, like for instance, in Rajasthan, when there was a murder of Kanhaiya, right? They took down all the videos, all people who were posting about it irrespective of context. So it's not like that they don't have the sophistication or the technologies to do that, because I mean they can do it. It's just that I think we need to demand more of them. And it's not like, I mean, the responsibility is completely on them, but they definitely have to do more. They can't just like say that, oh, we can't do it, because the stated position of all these companies is that we're not arbiters of truth. Fine, you're not arbiters of truth, but what happens in times like today when fake news is a real threat? It's like a threat to people's lives, it's a threat to democracy. They have to step up.
Yeah, can I just add to that quickly? There's also this mindset of the tech giants that this is what we do, and one size needs to fit all, not understanding that India is not the US. And the way a statement is used in the US, it can cause a riot probably in India. You have to see it in the context of our diaspora. You have to see it how our population is far more diverse, and everything has to be localized. So their understanding of our culture, whether it is localization of data, whether it is understanding that different cultures in India will operate very differently, and like you said, caste slurs or talking about racism can be used in a different context in India. They just need to be put in a corner and made to understand that if you're going to be doing business in our land, you have to follow the law of our land.
Understood. But I'd like to focus, we're going to have a lot of talk about the platform today, but I'd like to focus more on, as we said, the misinformation, disinformation has been happening for decades, and the platforms themselves say that they're trying not to be arbiters of truth. I think first of all we should just focus on, we have powerful institutions in this country like the parties who, as we've learned, they are spreading half of the misinformation and so I want to focus on like Charu, for example. Why do you think it is that we've had so many fact checks of like Mr. Amit Balia or of minister and of other means? What role? Why is it that there is so much misinformation coming from the government itself? And what role can it play in decreasing that from its own vessels?
If I can just come in and mention two things. First, I agree completely. But let's not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, right? Sure, there are more things that we don't end up doing. But I think we as individuals and political parties and companies, whatever you want to see, we need to be serious. Okay. If a politician, a mid-level politician, makes a post where he abuses a particular caste, every major political party in India will get that person out. I have that much faith in them. Doesn't matter which political party, they will say this person has done something that is not acceptable. Get out. Very recently, there was a BJP politician, I believe, who said something. He was a 6-time winner in his elections. He said something about, we will change the constitution. And BJP made a statement by not putting him on their list the next time. They're like, you're crossing a line.
They punished him for that behavior.
Yes, there was a clear punishment in place. That, look, we need to operate on a basic democratic level. This is where we draw the line. You're not allowed to say this.
And this
right? This is not a game that one plays, right? At least that is the impression. And here is the important part. Whether it's a punishment or not is almost secondary. What is important is the people who see this happening, that is the impression they get. And right now, unfortunately, for whatever reason, we the people of India, I as a normal citizen, am not getting the impression that the political parties are serious about combating disinformation. I'm getting the feeling that if some mid-level person in some party High level people, perhaps they are more serious. But if some mid-level person in some party, let's say, I'll give you a concrete piece. Recently, just before the elections, and my own family was joking about it. In Bengal, Mamata Banerjee had an injury. Last time also she had the leg injury. This time there's a head injury. Now this seems very crass, joking about it, but that is what is happening in all of these groups, right? The Prime Minister expressed condolences, many other parties expressed condolences. What is happening in these groups? There's a huge set of conspiracy theories saying this is part of a plan in order to garner some amount of sympathy before the elections, right? And what has happened is there's a dichotomy. Even though the top level people are stating that they effectively believe this and expressing condolences, there's a huge number of mid-level people who are official party members of various parties who are spreading, oh, look, it's a straight line, haha. Right? So now what is the impression that people get? That whether you believe it or not, there is a clear disconnect there. That the mid-level people can say what they want and the party will not punish them. Right? That is the impression that is coming through. We saw this sort of lackadaisical attitude about disinformation combined with a certain type of religious hatred, fervor, whatever you want to call it, since we were talking about COVID, during the Tablighi Jamaat incident. Right? There was so much fake news spreading about, oh, these people, when police came near them, they spit at them, trying to sort of get them infected, etc., etc. And I will tell you again, I don't like saying equating all parties. All party members across many parties said these sorts of things, right? So there was, and we see this happening again and again and again. And so I think we need to get very serious. And parties, they are powerful institutions, right? They have a lot of good people. I think the good people need to draw the line that we will not tolerate this.
So if you could take that forward, Charu, on how mid-level officials and others just seem to have freedom to say whatever they want and they are not being punished for it.
Right, and it works kind of like Chinese whispers, right? It starts off as one thing, and then there's so much of opinion building. So as you rightly said, it's not exactly misinformation. It is just that, oh, this has happened, this is true, this has also happened, this is true, and I'm going to draw a link between the two, and this is my opinion. That there's a connection and there's a story building, and this happens before every election. And that is the problem. This opinion building, that's why I said this validation, the need to go viral, that is the problem. And it exists a lot in political parties themselves. And I'll tell you simple reasons for it. And I'm being completely non-partisan when I'm saying this. In a country the size of ours, you want to be relevant. You want your voice to be important. You want your voice to matter. Whether it is in your party itself, or it is, say, on television or on social media. So you want to give out this analysis that other people have not come up with. Like whatever is the incident, you write these threads, you say 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm connecting the 4, now use your mind and apply logic. And don't you think I'm right? So it's not really misinformation. It is more opinion building. And I want to say one thing here. Most people who are in very senior positions today are not entirely handling their social media by themselves. They will have a team of people who supposedly put out the research. That is made into a creative leader, and there'll be another person who's clicking the button and posting it. And I'm talking of senior people, and it is actually this information which is copied and pasted at multiple different levels, and it is used everywhere. So can we have some kind of accountability for this particular team? Is it possible that the research was all right, but the one who is creating the creative using that research, maybe a pie diagram or something like that, did they go wrong somewhere? Or is it that the one who was posting used language which could have been avoided? Can a licensing be done? Could a certification be done? It's so easy for people to say, I didn't post it. Somebody who works even at my level in the party. It's on one side, you'll say, oh, I take control of my social media and I know what is going out there, because the fact is no one else has my password. In the end, even if some information comes to me from outside, I will do a copy paste, but which means I'm reading it. And I'm the one who is clicking the button to say quote or tweet or, Insta this. But if you're going to tomorrow turn around, claim and say that I didn't do this, my team did it, Can you just pass out the buck like that? I'm not using names here, not giving examples at all, because again, this is a problem across party lines. So the social media handlers, the managers, whatever you want to call them, there has to be accountability on their part as well.
So you think that is something that should happen within
I
the
think
party?
so.
There should
Absolutely.
be that clampdown within the BJP
Because
itself.
at the end of the day, the buck stops with the person whose account it is, who's the admin of the account. Even if you have other people using that account, can you vouch for them? And if you cannot vouch for them, why are you giving them access to something which is essentially a reflection of just you?
Yeah, I just coming back to the previous point that you made about media literacy, that is what is more important than fact checking in per se. But when political parties continuously share mis and disinformation, it creates that last evidence when people are so scared of coming across false news that they stop believing in the truth as well. So when political parties are going to spread mis and disinformation, are going to invest in that, then there is no question of media literacy, because now people are not aware of what is happening on the internet anymore. One. Second point is about if people are sharing mis or disinformation, even mid-level politicians, what are the actions that would be taken against them? Because in a lot of cases, what we have seen is a lot of these posts by mid-level politicians and all parties stay up despite there being fact checks done, despite there being labeled on other platforms. They continue to stay up and no action has been taken against them, and they continue to speak on certain issues in the public forum and on TVs, etc. So what action is taken against them, that is what matters. And if that will give across that message that if you are a low-level employee, a low-level party person, you don't have to spread mis or disinformation to become a senior person in the party. You don't have to gain those many followers. You don't have to become viral to become someone important in the party. So if there's an action taken against those senior members who are spreading mis and disinformation, then that will give that correct message for the people who are joining the party, that we don't have to stoop to this.
But you know, if I can just say this, there are very few people who avoid those 50 seconds of fame. Most people would grab that chance with both hands and say, let me say something outrageous on TV because that statement is going to go viral. Another thing about deleting posts is that if you're a big handle, if you're considered a big handle, the fact that you deleted something after posting it and after it has had a certain amount of impressions will cause more of an uproar than keeping it there. And I think that's one reason why a lot of posts are not taken down, because the fact that you delete it, it's public acknowledgement of, okay, I was wrong. And then everyone else who's not linked to you ideologically is going to have screenshots of that. The amount of screenshots on social media today, oh my God, it's mindful. Everything is taken a screenshot of. And then that screenshot is going to be shared. And probably that causes more harm than simply, I think maybe keeping it there. A lot of people look at it impressions wise, then there are going to be 5,000 other accounts sharing.
More harm to whom? The person who shared it, or all the social media users who are going to see that post still stay up?
Yeah.
Earlier you had mentioned about social media teams handling the accounts of people and them not posting it directly. It'd be great to have more accountability there. The problem is the functioning of these social media teams is so opaque, so well guarded, that it is nearly impossible to investigate them. And
we don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
We only know the politicians.
Exactly. We have been reaching out to several party workers across the North India, the UP, Rajasthan, to try to just interview them anonymously, trying to figure out how they work. Local, very small party offices in small villages. It is extremely difficult because it's all mouth is shut. Nobody wants to.
So tell us then, why are the mouths shut? Why can't we talk?
I think we need to be realistic here. Social media also is a big tool for perception building, right? So there has to be a line drawn. What is misinformation? What is disinformation? And what is okay and what is not okay? Which is why I mean, one is the tech platforms doing more. The other thing which I started with saying that there needs to be some autonomous body, some institution which has to do this. And at the same time, I do agree that political parties also need to do more. There has to be a bipartisan consensus, which is what I really feel. That something needs to be done, because now it's having real life consequences. It's not just perception building anymore. It's not just like I'm, advocacy. It's not limited to that anymore. It might have started with that, but now social media has become complete. It has taken a different form altogether.
So if I can come in, it's not just that something needs to be done. We know what that something is, that the entities themselves. So look, if I'm working for a company or a university or whatever in my case, if I see something stupid and it causes my shares to tank, you can be absolutely certain that the company will put in a policy that next time anyone shares something of this variety, it had better adhere to ABCD rules. You need to pass it through this entity. There's a process.
Many companies have a social media policy.
Yeah. And so, I'm very politically incorrect. I'm not a politician, so I get to say this stuff. I assume the incident you were talking about, recently there was a case where there was a politician, I believe from the Indian National Congress, Supriya Srinath, who posted, I shouldn't say who posted, someone from that person's team posted a derogatory remark about Kangana Ranaut, who is an actress. This is the background of that story, right? Now, and in that case, there was an immediate apology that was tendered that, look, this was not me. This was someone from my team who posted without my knowledge. And in this particular case, I think I honestly believe them because it was so derogatory that, it was, no sane person is going to do this. It hurts their own chances. It's a stupid thing to do. So I kind of believe them in this case. My worry is that clearly what has happened in this case is that internally, and this is my speculation, that the Indian National Congress has gone to this person and said, you did a stupid thing. Fix this now or else.
No, before the party could tell her, she did it herself.
Right.
Because it's an honest mistake. And that's the point, it was deleted, right?
Yes.
What about the posts which are not deleted?
Yeah. Now, I'm taking this because... So I'm taking this incident because this is the most recent one. Many parties do this, this keeps happening. What I want to say is what needs to happen in this case is that then this should be a wake-up call for all the parties, because again, I could cite from BJP, I could cite from AG. This needs to be, no, you need to be significantly more careful when you're doing this stuff. And that message needs to go out publicly. You all know much better than me how to story build, right? Clearly, the story has not been built that you need to be more careful. So that needs to happen.
I mean, from our side, we do as much as we can because honestly speaking, our party is also, I mean, you might disagree, but we are at the receiving end of most disinformation. Our party leaders are at the end of the maximum disinformation campaigns. So, I mean, we try, I mean, for us, it's like a big issue and we are trying our best, I mean, which is including engaging with the tech platforms as well. India parties had written to all the platforms last year, Meta, YouTube, everyone, that in the run-up to the elections, they need to do more. They need to have, this thing. But we haven't heard from them. And I mean, there's only so much.
There's this general disinterest. And, when we were talking about manipulated media, sometime a couple of years ago, one of my posts was labeled manipulated media. But it was not a post that merely I made. It was a post that was shared by ministers in my party. It must have been shared by, say, 30 people, all 30 of them extremely credible. A lot of times we end up doing that. We see the post of someone important. We think that this information is right. Maybe can I take this picture, write my opinion, and repost it. And with time, I think I have learned, and many like me have learned, that you don't have to be the first mover here. You don't have to be the first to put out the information because you're first, a lot more people would be likely to see it and to share it. So once you take that pause to figure out, is this okay? Is this not okay? Is this fake? Is this some kind of propaganda? I think that's that carefulness which needs to come in for everyone. When you have an account which has a blue tick, or when you have above a certain number of followers, you cannot take your position on these tech platforms that lightly. You have to be accountable for what you put out. Maybe today my account will not have as many engagements because I'm not outrageous, but I'm not causing controversies. And I think skimming through our pages, we should all be able to say that I did the right thing. But there are fewer and fewer people. See, for every influencer who slows down, there are 5 more which take their place who don't want to slow down. We see this with news channels also. In the rush to give that breaking news, sometimes you don't have the context. And once you've shot the arrow, you're done.
So I wanted to, I appreciate that. I wanted to sort of circle back or pivot a little bit to the inner culture and incentives and disincentives within institutions like the party. So, you know, for example, Abhilash and Archis and I were talking before about how Prashant Umrao, who is, you know, a BJP MP from UP now, before was a lawyer and was known for years of spreading a high amount of misinformation and disinformation. Or Shobha Karanlaje, who is now a BJP candidate, also was a big spreader of misinformation and disinformation. But now you see Prashant has been made an MP and he's become much, much better. There's been like a significant change after he's become an MP to before. He's much more careful, right? So now he's feeling the pressures. Same with Shobha. She was a big spreader of it. Now she's become an MP. She's become much more careful. So why is it that only once we're in power that we have, how can we change the culture and incentive structure so that people, even before they become a senior level official, have that care? If you can.
Yes, I think I'm going to use my own example and I don't want to speak for anyone else. With time on social media, and I'm talking of social media like it's my office. Right? It's my workspace. I turn up there every morning in all seriousness. I see what is going on. I do my bit and then I withdraw at the end of the day. So when you do it in the beginning, maybe your voice doesn't have that much of importance. So you can just get away with being frivolous at times. But once you've been trolled a couple of times, once you realize that you do wield a certain amount of influence, not too much in my case, but eventually you learn that even one bit of information which can go viral, either ways, maybe it's, sometimes it's harming you, sometimes it's harming others, sometimes people are being horrible to you. All these instances come together and they teach you to be more tempered. See, politics is also something which should be looked at in a very like a long-term thing. It cannot be that today I'm going to be so incredible on a debate that I'm going to say terrible things, and these terrible things are going to go viral, and I'm going to take a clip of that and put it on my social media and incite more people. That is not being responsible. And when you face the music for it's always not something wrong that you're saying. Sometimes you put out an opinion that a lot of people disagree with. I'll use, like I said, I'm using my own example. Once upon a time, on a Father's Day, I just wrote one statement saying, Happy Father's Day to all single mothers. Oh, you're not going to believe the amount of trolling that I had to deal with. And that's the day. And I'm a single mother. I was not making a feminist statement. I was not making a statement for others. I was just speaking for me. My kid doesn't have a dad, and I think I need to do something special to make his day nice. Okay, happy Father's Day to me. But it went so bad. It went so bad that the after effects stayed with me for a week. And I said, okay, put a full stop on sharing things that don't need to be shared. Put a full stop on putting out information that you can't spend a lot of time explaining. And that's when you withdraw. I think it is with experience you withdraw. It is not necessarily being given a ticket to become an MP.
I see. Sure. Just about the incentive and disincentive structures. Why is it that we only when somebody reaches a senior level and they're able to affect, you know, the leaders of the party and its reputation, do we actually take action against somebody? Otherwise, they're able to run.
In our case, I mean, we have trainings for our party workers, and where we are telling them to whatever they're posting to double check it once, because it's honestly speaking, and for them also it's very tempting, right? Something is like doing the rounds and probably it suits your agenda and you want to put it out, but there is this I mean, in the party, like, we have this thing that you have to double check, you have to do that, which is why we are extremely careful. And if something goes down, somebody posts something which is fake, we tell them to, you know, call them up and tell them that, you know, this is fake, delete it, and we do that at best as we can.
Do you think, in any meaningful way, are there like 2 or 3 concrete ways that you think the BJP or Congress can change their culture or mechanisms when it comes to posting information on social media? Is there anything concrete? Are there any 2 or 3 things that you think could be enacted today or in the coming months?
So my party is extremely careful about who says what on social media. See, we cannot control every individual, but we try and give them the right to. So right down from the mandal level to the national level, and this is a massive party I'm talking about, spread across every corner of this country. There is this understanding that nothing you say should be something that can harm the party. whether now or in the long run. So you have to be careful about that. The trainings include this. So whether it is how you're speaking on television, what you're posting on social media, your conduct with people, you have to be careful about it. And I think political parties do take it seriously. Disciplinary action is taken against you. You can be removed from the party for a couple of years, sometimes forever a couple of times. So if I can use the example of Nupur Sharma, she's no longer in BJP, and that is because the party has taken action, and it always does. I don't think deliberately any political party will want to side with someone who's openly doing something which can be considered wrong.
Archis, Debayan, do you agree with that?
I mean, I don't know how the inner workings are of a party, but so far we're talking about things that have been put out in the public, on a Facebook page or a Twitter account. But what about all those thousands of WhatsApp groups run by political parties, in smaller areas that are targeting people of those areas with disinformation, because that cannot be connected to a specific leader or a party. By just looking at the information, you may be able to draw some affiliation with a party, but it's not signed by someone. It's not saying that, okay, this is a message from the BJP or the Congress or from this or that leader. So those messages, because we can still fact check things that are on Facebook and it's all out there, it can be researched, can be looked up. But when it comes to WhatsApp, it's a black box, and it's encrypted. Nobody has access to it. The only way we get to know what's going on is if people share with us on our tip line, which is really maybe 1% of what's out there. So we have this massive disinformation campaign running underground that we just know about, and we can see the effects sometimes. We know that WhatsApp has led to lynchings of nearly 40 people between 2017 2018. There are various examples as well. So we know that the effects are real. We see these messages on our family group sometimes, or somebody just forwarding it to us, or on our tip lines. But the whole picture, it's really difficult for us to draw, but we can feel the existence of these massive WhatsApp campaigns that are running, So those are the ones that, we've been trying to tackle. And again, from political parties, it's really hard to get anything from them, all the people that we reach out to, it's so difficult.
Do you think, Richard or Charu, are we open to any greater transparency on this?
I'm going to say that we are at the receiving end of this. There's something called WhatsApp University, which has really been damaging us. So I completely agree with him. And WhatsApp, frankly, is like a big black hole, because there is just no way to track where the message originated from. And by the time, probably if you can track also, it has spread like wildfire and the damage is already done. So something needs to be done. I don't know what the solution there for WhatsApp is compared to other platforms.
No, I get your point about people coming into power and then assuming responsibility and becoming more responsible on their social media platforms. But the fact that they were given that power despite having shared questionable information in the past also impacts the people who run these WhatsApp channels, who run these surrogate Facebook pages, and that it tells them that, listen, this person did this and then became someone important. So then if I continue to do this in the name of a particular party, I will get that position on
and I'll be careful later on.
I'll be careful later on. So that is what is happening, number one. And then it's not just that people are sharing opinion. Like in Prashant Umrao's case in 2020, he shared misinformation about the movie Pathaan. I can see the example, but he shared an edited video of the movie Pathaan in 2020 when the movie came out in 2023. In Congress's case, a lot of the Bharat Jodo Yatra has seen a lot of crowd. There was absolutely no necessity for Congress handlers to share the Puri Rath Yatra videos as people crowding for Rahul Gandhi's arrival in certain states. There was absolutely no reason for that. But
Congress handlers.
A lot of Congress handlers, state handlers, Congress state handlers.
Karnataka, Kerala.
A lot of Congress state handlers, all verified state handlers shared. There was absolutely no necessity for doing that. You could have shared the original videos itself. So sometimes it's opinion, I completely agree, but sometimes it's clear mis and disinformation. Sometimes it's completely false information, and then just don't do that. Or else, at least if a person, low-level person or a mid-level person is doing that, have whatever action is being taken against them, have that in the public forum, so that people on the ground who are creating these WhatsApp groups, who are creating these surrogate Facebook pages, also understand that this is not what should be reported.
So here we are functioning on the assumption that every single person who is running, say, a WhatsApp channel or a page on Facebook is affiliated to a political party. But let's also remember that we are functioning in a greatly polarized country right now. And people are extremely polarized. They are polarized about their political opinion. They are very pro or anti, and they are very, very open about these pro views and anti views. So many times, I think it is unfair to attribute actions taken by people who are not on an official office bearer position. Their actions cannot be attributed to a political party, even though it looks like a leaning to the left or a leaning to the right. That's one thing. Now, when we're also talking about WhatsApp University going all out, it goes all out for all political parties. I mean, Ruchira would say one thing, Charu would say another. If we had representatives of other political parties, they would say exactly the same thing. But, when we talk about issues like that from a policy level, there are going to be activists and political players who talk about privacy. They say, oh, the government wants to get into our chats. There's too much of censorship. So you cannot have your cake and eat it too. To be safe from misinformation, to be in a position where you can call out someone for saying and doing the wrong thing in this black box called WhatsApp also, you have to support the government when any new rules are being framed. And maybe it is for political posturing, maybe it is for the reason of debates, but at the end of the day, when rules like this become applicable in India, everyone benefits, not just the party in power, because if we are honest, the party in power can change 5 years later, 10 years later, but then these rules are hopefully going to stay for a long time. And it's not just India, which is looking at regulating this space, whether it is Germany or Singapore or Australia recently, France, they have been very vocal. You have to make sure accountability is fixed. They have officers here in India who are answerable to us. If someone is putting out a viral message on a WhatsApp group, how is it that if I complain today, how does the government or the police track down the person who started with that? Just because I'm in a chain, I cannot be the head that's hunted. You have to start with the person who originally started with that information chain. And another thing is, it's impossible to expect our citizens to fact check every single little thing before they forward it or they post it. So accountability has to be with the person who starts that thread of misinformation, and only the government can do that if the regulations are in place.
Well, one last thing, then we'll pivot on to
so a couple, just to respond to Charu. Yes, it's true that WhatsApp is encrypted, and for the sake of privacy, we shouldn't be looking into this. The best way to treat this problem is if political parties were a bit more transparent about how they are conducting their campaigning on WhatsApp. But that's not happening. Another problem with regulation is just because a regulation has been put out doesn't necessarily mean it's effective and it's treating the problem. The committee who's building these regulations, they need to be transparent. They need to discuss how they're doing it. They need to basically take in recommendations and then respond to criticism. And only then can we have regulations that are effective. If it's just for the sake of putting out regulations, then it can be argued that whoever is in power would like to have regulations that could actually help them stay in power. So these concerns are real, and it's true. And I know many people, and some people maybe in this room, who have been working towards giving advices and recommendations on things like the IT rules, how to improve them. But there hasn't been any response or any willingness to, take these recommendations.
Better. So before we move over to questions from the audience, just a few of them, I'll just give each panelist just 1 quick minute of closing remarks, with this sort of being the focus if possible. So, despite the gravity of this issue that we've been discussing now for the past 45 minutes of misinformation and disinformation, and how critical it is to how people vote, and how it can, skew people's behavior and create real life violence and lynching and all this, it's still not in the top 10 or 20 things that people will cast their vote based on. You can see this across in polls and surveys. Misinformation, disinformation, propaganda is not in the top factor. So, I've spoken to people across political parties, and they say, how much are we really going to work on this if this is not what people are going to cast their vote based on, or they're not angered by this? So my question is, one, what can we do to address this problem effectively, given that it seems like most people, even if they are affected by it, don't really seem to care enough about it to do something or to change their vote? And what can our institutions do to try and solve this, given that we tried to stand up a fact-checking outfit within the government, and now that's been stopped, right? So given that people don't really seem to care that much, especially at the ballot box, and two, our initiatives from the government to have fact-checking outfits have not succeeded, what can we do within this context to sort of end on?
I think so when it comes to people, right? I mean, we are a group sitting here, we feel that this is an issue, but when it comes to masses, I think the awareness levels are still low that what is, fabricated, what is disinformation, and how it is really affecting them. And two, I'm not sure if it's really an issue for them because there are so many issues that they are concerned about. So it's not really surprising that this does not figure on their top priorities. Having said that, I think what you said about the fact-checking unit also, I think there needs to be whatever policy is being made, it needs to be broad-based, it needs to be consultative, and there is, I mean, while the government should have rules, I do think that it can be a bit heavy-handed, which is why I think all stakeholders need to be consulted, which is what I had said that, political parties having a bipartisan consensus coming together and, doing something about it. That probably is the way forward. And having an institution which is autonomous.
Lack of digital literacy or low on awareness has all popularly been cited as the major reasons for disinformation or misinformation spreading. I believe that it is majorly a lack of critical thinking, which makes us fail, even those like highly literate people fail in basically processing information rationally. Because they're driven by emotions, because these are messaging that is, retargeting people's emotions. So that is a big problem. On FC, I'd say that you cannot fact check yourself. You need to have an independent body, a very transparently functioning independent body. Only that person can fact check an institution like the government. You can't say, okay, this information about us is wrong or right. That can be misused, as we've seen in the past. So yeah, I mean, there needs to be, I think you mentioned bipartisan, or there needs to be some kind of multi-party effort where all parties just come together and say, okay, we are on an arms race, like diving straight to hell. Let's stop this. Let's not mess with our voters anymore. And I would love to see that day. I would love to see that happening, and an independent committee being set up to regulate this specific part on the internet. That would be great.
Yeah, I understand that it's not a concern for a lot of people, but that is also because, like I just pointed out, because there's a lack of media literacy, lack of digital literacy, lack of critical thinking, that they don't understand how polarized they have become or how influenced they are by looking at the content that is being shared on social media or on their WhatsApp numbers. So the fact again remains that political parties should not be using mis or disinformation as a tool, because sometimes it's not just mis and disinformation, sometimes it's narrative building, sometimes it's perception building, which ultimately impacts the voter behavior while they don't even realize that it is impacting their voter behavior. The second point, the last point that I would end with is, if political parties, like which are also pointed out, there needs to be a bipartisan way in which we function to curb this problem. We also need some kind of transparency between, even like us fact checkers with the political parties. We reach out to political parties when there's a piece of misinformation to get their point of view. Forget taking it down, we don't even get a response on a lot of these posts. So that needs to happen for us to take a step forward in covering this problem.
Thanks, Abhilash. Charu.
Okay, so there seems to be this approval for some kind of an institution which can fact check. I don't think that's going to work, because there is an increased distrust in any kind of institutions. And if opposition political parties cannot even put their faith behind the Election Commission of India or the Supreme Court, and look at that also with a biased view, what makes you feel that an institution for fact checking is going to be taken seriously? So if the government does something, it is labeled X, and if an independent body does something, it is labeled Y. And that's the problem that we're all grappling with. I think it does require a roundtable of sorts where all stakeholders come together, they decide something and they stick to it. Social media is a subtle influence. It is not always one piece of information which goes out and creates a lot of change. It is subtle. It is done over a period of time. But I'm going to end by again saying this. When we go on social media, it is only to seek validation for our opinion or to validate another's opinion. We have learned to differentiate between this opinion and information. And if more than 50% of our electorate is aware of misinformation, disinformation on social media, they are approaching it in the same way. That also means they're more careful towards it.
Thank you, Charu.
So I'll just do one reaction and one comment. The reaction is we're all far less rational than we think. Okay. This idea that somehow awareness will lead to rationality, will lead to a sort of educated, good, whatever by definition, database, not going to happen, right? Facebook has shown this repeatedly. They did this famous experiment in Australia where they thought it was a good idea to see if making teenagers sad made them buy more stuff. So they manipulated the order of the posts and tried to make some teenagers happier and some teenagers sadder. And they wrote a paper about it saying, oh, how nice this is. And they didn't realize people would be annoyed with them about it, right? We know this happens at political levels also in benign ways. So you have Frank Lunz's famous thing where he renamed estate taxes to death taxes. And suddenly 80% of Americans approved of estate taxes, but 80% of them disapproved of death taxes. So that's how rational we are. Right? So that is not going to save us. We are very, very, very susceptible to nudges. Even if we know a piece of news is fake, we see it 7 times. That's the joke, right? You see it a certain number of times, you start, it sort of percolates in your head. It becomes background knowledge which you base future decisions on. Now, there are some big solutions that will need to happen at some point. You know, maybe an independent body, maybe not, maybe something else. I don't know about those big things. But I was very glad to hear that the parties have internal trainings. I sort of assumed, but it's good to know for sure. It's not working. Okay. So if you can have the BJP Adhivesan of 11,000 members during the book fair, let's take those 11,000. Forget WhatsApp groups, forget all the other folks, right? The Congress, I'm sure, has similar meetings, right? Of a certain size, make it clear to those people that this is not done. And I'm sure you're doing that already, but maybe say it twice, right? Because it's not working right now. And as an academician, I'm very worried because I assure you, wherever we are, 5 years down the line, the rate at which AI tech is growing, we are going to be there. We're not feeling it because we're only chest or neck deep. 5 years down the line, suddenly you're 20 feet underwater and wondering how you got there. So now is the time to sort of set the statement that, you know, be honest. Be completely and absolutely honest in your statements. Double check everything. Triple check it if you're not sure. Wait 24 hours before posting. All of these things need to be pushed in a very serious way. And I assure you, people respect your leaders, right? If your leaders come out and say this, people will obey. That has not happened yet. Or maybe it hasn't happened enough.
Great. I think that's a powerful, resonating way to end the panel. We'll take maybe just 3 or 4 questions before we move ahead. Does anyone in the audience? Okay, I guess we'll start there. And if you can just introduce yourself, your name and your background.
Sure. My name is Abhilash. I'm a journalist with Panelist. So I appreciate Charu and Krishan being frank about how some of these things work. My question is related to how, when you have ministers, they are also party individuals. And once we enter the furor of election, people do tend to forget that they're ministers. And I'll take an example. I can only speak on the record as a journalist. The Minister of State for IT was spreading misinformation about what was said in a particular video. And this is the Minister of State for IT who brought about the fact check immediately. Right? Now, in this case, Charu, what you spoke about, the media training, etc. For 2.5 years, he's been the Minister of State. He has not done things like this. he has interpreted the law in different ways. Fair enough. There are multiple lawyers in the room. They love to split hair over commas and full stops. That's perfectly fine. But to blatantly say that this is what a video says and call someone anti-national, that is a very tall tree. And it's clear from the tweet that he's not necessarily saying that as the MOS for IT, as a BJP candidate who's fighting in the Lok Sabha elections. So how do you distinguish between a minister or a position holder versus a political versus a party candidate or a party function? Because this kind of illusion is something we are seeing with what Archis also pointed out, with certain ministry handles as well. For instance, I think it was the Ministry of Culture.
Ministry of Culture and
Culture. Yeah, Ministry of Culture
is
the one that spread misinformation about that facts thing. So when the difference between, when the gap between the executive and the political party that collapses, that is when disinformation is actually being weaponized by the government and not the party. And this is something that could happen to Congress as well tomorrow, and has probably happened in the past. And that's propaganda 101. How are you dealing with that given the virality with which disinformation spreads, the speed with which it spreads? And the second thing about, I'm sorry, I have a cough, so that's why I'm back there. Second thing is about your alternate accounts or your surrogate accounts of Twitter and other social media. I take an example of, say, Mr. Sinha, who often masquerades as a pro-BJP account, or a monk who often masquerades, and I think has now been blocked on Twitter, as a pro-Congress account. They regularly spread disinformation, not misinformation, disinformation, which is amplified by both party leaders as well as those in government, state or center. So, as Dr. Gupta said, the trainings have obviously failed something. And the different and party members aren't recognizing the difference between the party between being a party member and being a part of the elected government. Because there are two sets of expectations from them. So how are you dealing with that, especially with elections?
Yeah, sure. So what you say is true for every state government as well. Yes. It's very easy to take examples of the central government because currently they are visible, but the same thing has happened with the Karnataka state government. A lot has been happening with the Tamil Nadu state government. And we must always remember that a person will always have an opinion, whether they're in government or they're just a common citizen and not openly affiliated to a political party. And that opinion will come through. I want to again repeat about the fact that a person's team needs to have accountability. If you're appointing a team, you're obviously taking the advice of that team, giving that team a lot of free hand to operate that the way that they feel is your style of operation. And maybe you could get to a point where if you've not done enough background checks on that particular team, and it's again a very gray area. Some people will have an entire organization working for them. Some person will have one person working for them. That is something which needs to be cleared out, and I think it's being overly simplistic to say that a minister will not have a political affiliation. That's
no, I'm not saying that. I'm acknowledging that.
Yeah.
I'm saying they obviously have a political affiliation.
Yeah.
But given that at the end of the day, say, as a citizen, I'm seeing only one account at the end of the day. I'm either seeing Narendra Modi or Rahul Gandhi. I'm not seeing Narendra Modi, BJP, Rahul Gandhi, INC, and Narendra Modi PM and Rahul Gandhi, leader of opposition. I'm not seeing like 4 different accounts.
Yeah.
I'm seeing 2. So, for instance, you will not use BJP headquarters to announce a new government policy. Right? You will use the ministry. There is separation of that kind of separation happens. That becomes significantly harder for me. And I acknowledge that. And that's why I prefaced my question by saying that every individual in a party, especially in any government, sector or state, is simultaneously an elected member and a member of a party. So how, and there are competing interests there, especially in the midst of campaign. How are you ensuring that those competing interests won't keep on clashing and actually lead to further disinformation?
So no, but that's exactly what I'm telling you. So even, there are so many times the PM speeches have comments under it by opposition supporters, let's not call them leaders, where they say, oh, you spoke like a BJP person. The fact is he's in BJP because he is a BJP person. That's the ideology he identifies with. And it is obviously going to be a part of his personality, no matter what chair he sits on or he doesn't sit in. I think the leaders are conscious themselves. And we should understand that if a handle says the name of one particular minister, he would be wearing several caps as an MP of his region, as a minister, as a BJP leader, his independent family life even. And every single thing coming out of every single person's mouth can honestly not be regulated. Of course, misinformation has to be checked, but it has to be checked all along. And the higher you are on this particular ladder, the more responsible you are, and we already acknowledged that in our panel discussion.
Okay, I think we only have time for maybe one more. Is there anyone else from the media or the press here that has a question? You're with the press? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ivan. I work for TechCrunch. I wanted to ask both of you a question that you talk with platforms. And while you have some kind of training internally, platforms have their own rules, not perfect, not great. While like Debayan said, the training is not working. Have you thought about a framework of what is allowed and what is not allowed across party lines when there are members? Because you said training is, and you said about responsibility being higher. That is a given, but even when you say official accounts of local representatives which are representing party, I'm not talking about fan accounts, I'm not talking about other affiliate accounts. Why don't you have a framework where you say that there are blanket bans on these things, and which is also transparent to other folks like us, that, okay, this is something that we won't talk about? Because you were talking about platforms having a set of rules on racism, while platforms not having rules on casteism. Why don't parties have those rules as well? Because these are big parties. You folks are not platforms, but you got big parties representing a lot of people.
So I think there are two different issues, what you're talking about. As far as the party trainings are concerned, we're already doing that. And the focus is on like a lot of ideological work, promoting this thing, and also at the same time, not putting fake images or photos.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We're already doing that. No, we're already doing that. That is what is happening in our trainings, right? The issue, what you're talking about, the platforms is different, right? The platforms don't have policies. These are two different things.
They're not different things. What I'm saying is what you're putting, what the party members are putting out.
Yeah.
Why there is no rule from the party side that this won't go out on our official source.
There is.
So can I just put it in another way?
Sure.
I'm only sharing what I believe to be true. And Debayan said that in his introductory remarks. So if I'm conditioned to think a certain way, and if I'm sharing something, I already believe it to be true. So when political parties conduct their training, they're very, very clear about this. Don't spread anything wrong. Don't talk about something which will bring a bad name to your party. Be very careful about the information you put out, etc., etc. But at the same time, if someone senior has posted something, I will be very comfortable just taking a screenshot of that, assuming it to be true, and voting it elsewhere, right? Because I already believe it to be true. I like your suggestion of there being a clear set of rules which political parties, if not together, independently can work on, and that will be great. And I'm going to take the suggestion back to my party. And as for the tech giants, there is no response from them on a lot of issues because they no longer have officials in India, and that's something that we have just learned to let go. I mean, how many emails will you eventually write and get no response?
I get that. I'm not talking about their part.
But I appreciate the suggestion, and I think it's a great one. Though, like I said, they're already doing it.
See, the ecosystem, just to what she had said earlier, the ecosystem is so vast, right? So we are doing that with party leaders and party workers, but on all sides. The ecosystem is so large, sometimes we probably don't even know that this person is doing it. But obviously, if it catches our attention, we tell them, that don't do it. Just to give an example, a few days ago, there was this image of Virat Kohli. It's a photoshopped image, which was doing the rounds, right? Where he's seeing a video, we're seen to be seeing a video of Mr. Gandhi, right? I mean, a lot of our people also posted it, and we told them that this is fake, and they took it down, right? So it does happen, probably, because it's happening at such a large scale. So maybe you feel that we're not doing it, but we're definitely doing it.
I think that's all the time we have for questions. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, we are sort of running 15-20 minutes behind. So I think we'll wrap up the panel here. You can still chat with panelists. We'll have a short tea break, so you can keep chatting with panelists there, and then we'll get set up for our next panel on content moderation. But let's give it up for our panelists. Thank you.